Let me start with a question. Do you think the movements of this polearm unit are appropriate? Hello, everyone. In this video, I'll be discussing how to effectively use polearm units. In the comments on the previous video, I saw several like the one above, and it made me realize that many people are struggling with how to use polearm units properly. Even though the battlefield is flooded with cavalry, I'd always wondered why inexperienced players hesitate to pick polearm units. Now I understand why. This time, I'll cover the basics of polearm unit usage. Of course, just covering the basics wouldn't be interesting, so I'll also share tips on how to fight against Hetairoi cavalry and how to use maps in ways no one teaches. Let's get started. I'll point out the common mistakes made by inexperienced players and offer suggestions on how to improve. The reason is simple: inexperienced players don't realize their mistakes, so I'm highlighting them through this video. Honestly, no one else is going to teach you this, and those who need it most probably won't even watch. In this video, on how inexperienced players use polearm units. Please, do not copy these bad habits. The first mistake is that polearm unit selection is based on impulse. Inexperienced players only choose polearm units after their current warband has been wiped out. If you're thinking, what are you even talking about, you should know that this is the level of player quality we're dealing with now. Normally, you would pick polearms when cavalry numbers are high or expected to rise, but many players don't understand this. Take a look at this player's actions. They've been picking musketeers since the start. First, the enemy cavalry charges once. Then, they charge again. Only after their musketeers are wiped out do they finally pick polearm units. Why do they do this? It's connected to the next point. The second mistake is a lack of awareness of the enemy's unit composition. These players never consider the situation on the battlefield when choosing their units. They just pick what they feel like using. For instance, if the enemy has many polearm units, would you charge in with cavalry? Unfortunately, inexperienced players do. Then, just before colliding with the polearms, they realize the mistake and start hesitating, wandering around. It may seem unbelievable, but take a look at this scene. This is exactly what happens. Why? Because they've never pressed the tab key to check the battlefield before. Here's how it looks when someone uses the tab key correctly.
丸口とか使っちゃおうかな。これやりないのでは？やりない。やりないじゃん。お一人様？やばい、この人怪しい動きをしています。鶴が丸吉で引いちゃうのね。ここに人いるのか。なんか今変な人がいたんですよ。あ、これ何？これ引いちゃえる。これ。いけ丸吉。かっこいい。
Did you get it?
帰ろう。
Pressing the tab key displays the units deployed, allowing you to see whether cavalry are present. You use this to decide whether to deploy polearms. But I suspect inexperienced players don't even know this feature exists. This leads to the next point. The second mistake is that they don't watch the map. I mentioned this in the previous video, but the number of players who don't check the map has increased, leading to easy point captures and matches that end quickly. For example, if the players fighting within the red zone had used the tab key to assess the situation, they would have realized that fighting there was a bad idea. They're dragging the team down. Here's another battlefield. Most of the team is attacking from the right, but two players with polearms are sitting idle on the left, blocking the cavalry. Since they're not looking at the map, they don't even realize their actions are pointless. What I've discussed so far is basic combat awareness, and many players don't even have that. So why do they play this way? I think the next reason is the main cause. But first, let's test their map understanding. Do you know when the player markers appear on the map? They show up when the enemy is within a certain range of your field of vision. This means if you distance yourself, they won't appear on the map. However, there is a way to make them appear even when they're outside that range. It's called the ping action. By pinging, you can mark enemy positions on the map, even outside your line of sight. This is useful when enemy cavalry is trying to flank your team. Even if you're not engaging, you can alert your allies by pinging the enemy's location to prevent a surprise attack from behind. Inexperienced players never do this. The fourth mistake is an over-reliance on ranged units. Inexperienced players always want to use ranged units, no matter the situation. They prefer fighting from behind others, which gives them the illusion of understanding what I've discussed, even though they've grasped none of it. Here's a battle scene I showed in the previous video. The player tries to handle a situation that clearly calls for polearms using only ranged units. Naturally, since they aren't aware of the battlefield or checking the map, they cautiously creep forward while trying to stay alert for cavalry. There was a comment on the previous video about how polearms can't stop cavalry, but in this scene, even one polearm unit could have wiped out the enemy cavalry and eliminated the need to advance so cautiously.
Long sleep with Davinci glory.
Let's zoom in on the unit composition. No polearms, just 4 ranged units. Based on this composition, you can tell what kind of players they are. If you want to master using polearms, practice not relying on ranged units while keeping in mind the points I've made in this video. By the way, here's an example from a battlefield with players who understand cavalry. Not a single person picked ranged units when capturing this point. Here's something interesting I discovered. When trying to stop Hetairoi with Swiss halberdiers, the F2 formation reduces damage more than the F1 formation. You can see this better in slow motion, but for some reason, the F2 formation mitigates more damage. There might be some hidden stats at work. I tested this with other cavalry units to check for a silent patch, but the results showed no damage difference based on formation. The fifth mistake is a lack of awareness of team coordination. Inexperienced players never think about coordinating with their team. They charge in alone and get themselves killed, or they hesitate and won't advance. Team coordination is fundamental in this game, but if you're dealing with players like that, it's best to give up on them. Now, is it correct for this ranged unit to be acting alone? Considering the remaining forces on both sides, the control points, and the gauges, it's likely a mistake. Judging by the number of melee and ranged units the enemy has, this situation can't be overturned by a solo charge of ranged units. However, if you can secure the control point, then this action might not be entirely wrong. Team coordination depends on the experience of both the player and their teammates, so you can only judge by watching how they move. This video feels more like a tutorial than a strategic guide. The battlefield is currently in such disarray that I'm not sure when I'll have enough footage to make another video, but once I gather enough material, I'll release a follow-up.